In today's video, I'm going to talk about, we know our phobias aren't logical. That's why they're called an irrational phobia. So why do we try and solve them with logic? Get up! Hi, I'm Christopher Paul Jones, the Breakthrough Expert. Now in today's video, I'm going to talk about how phobias aren't logical. Now, so often when people have a phobia, they'll often call me up and go, you know, I know it's silly, like with flying, I've read all the statistics, I know it's the safest way to travel, I know I've got more chance of, falling out of bed and hurting myself. So why am I afraid? It's just so irrational. And it's like, and I always stop and go, yep, that's why it's called an irrational phobia, not a logical phobia. And yet so many people start to live in their head and ask why all the time. They know it's illogical, they know it's irrational, yet they're always trying to solve it with a logical, rational response. But that's not how emotions are created. They're created in a part of our mind, what I would call the subconscious. You can call it anything you want, your emotional brain, although in fact it's the whole body. The part of you that stores all your memories. Now it does have a system for making decisions, but it's not the same as the logical, analytical mind. And so really the key when I work with my clients is to tap into that part. Emotions aren't logical. And if they were, well, let me give you an example. Imagine there's a couple having an argument. You've got the one person trying to use logic to solve it, and the other one is emotional. They're upset, they're angry, whatever, and they're going, you don't understand, you don't listen to me, you don't appreciate this, and you don't do that. And the other person's going, well, you're just being irrational now. Does that ever solve the argument? In fact, I would say in most cases, it makes it 1,000 times worse. And yet this is what people are doing in their head. They're trying to solve it logically or analytically. I once had a client come to me. Now, I don't know exactly what he did because, well, the story goes this. He comes to me and he's talking, he's going, yeah, when I was here, and yeah, we were doing this exercise, and yeah, I had to break into this place and shoot this thing. And I go, oh, are you some kind of special forces? Stony faced, he goes. Couldn't possibly tell you. So I'm keeping it light, trying to keep it friendly. I was like, otherwise you'd have to kill me, right? No smile at all. I just said, couldn't possibly tell you. That's all I'm saying. And I was like, okay, let's just move on very quickly. But I'm assuming he was some high up military anyway. And he was telling me this story about how he's running through the jungle, some remote place, being shot at. And then he said, as he got to his helicopter, he felt terrified. I said, oh yeah, well, why is that? He's like, oh, because I have a fear of flying. I was like, wait a minute, you were scared of getting on the helicopter to get away to safety, but you weren't scared of being shot at. And he's like, no, that's what I train for all day, every day. Now, I'm not sure how much was hyperbole, how much was bravado on his part, but it's a fascinating story that a man can train to have no fear about being shot at. And yet when it comes to something that's relatively safe, even in probably a military situation, flying, certainly safer than staying and being shot at, he gets gripped with fear. Now, if it was logical, if it was proportional, of course this would be more scary because he's in more risk here. Whatever he thinks, however well trained he is, he's still in more risk. But that's why his phobia was irrational. And that's why he'd come to see me. So the biggest thing I'd ask you to work on is, rather than keep asking yourself, well, why am I afraid? Is to start asking yourself, how am I afraid? And when am I afraid? How do I mean? Well, how do I need to feel to be afraid? How do I think to be afraid of spiders, helicopters, water, sea, whatever it is you're afraid of, claustrophobia? What do I need to believe, picture? All these other things, what's going on in my internal world to feel that way? Because we're always doing that, and I talk about this in other videos. And the other question is to start looking at the when. When did I start feeling this way? What was the cause? And again, very often the same thing happens. Sometimes people go, oh, this thing came up from when I was 6 years old, but it doesn't make any logical sense. But again, I'll come back to how I started this. Emotions aren't logical. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, I'm Christopher Paul Jones. Get up.